Today's episode is brought to you by Forvis Mazars.
SoundCartel.
From SoundCartel, I'm Nicole Goodman, and this is Business Essentials Daily. As if the economic situation wasn't bad enough, soaring insurance costs could mean closure for many small businesses that have managed to hang in there till now. That is, of course, if you've been able to access insurance at all. Bruce Bilson is the Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman. He's offering some sound advice for bolstering your business against these expensive headwinds. Bruce explains more to Jeff Waters.
When you're in a business, you don't have too many choices. You have to have certain kinds of insurances to keep with your licensing requirements, your regulatory requirements, even to occupy premises and the like, and the nature of your work. I mean, if you're a professional services advisor, you need professional indemnity insurance. If you've got people coming into your property, public liability insurance is there. If you're running a rural pub, you need insurance over the building itself. These are just some of the dimensions that are really challenging small businesses right now. So whilst households are challenged, very much so right now, households have options, none that I would necessarily exercise, but some are, perhaps under-insuring, self-insuring, or not insuring at all. I wouldn't recommend that, but that is what a household can do. A small business doesn't have that perspective. You know, you want to run an accommodation facility for visitors in Cairns, you've got to have insurance, otherwise you won't get licensed. And on it goes. What is happening, though, more broadly is the market in insurance, sorry for the jargon, is quite hardened. Hardened meaning insurers have done their dough in recent years, paying for claims often related to natural disasters, not just here in Australia, but internationally. But we've had a particularly challenging time where payments going out have exceeded insurance premium income coming in, and the insurers are now re-evaluating their position. Do they want to be in certain types of insurance? What can they do to restore their reserves and their capacity to pay future claims? What are reinsurers doing, Jeff? They're the folks that insure the insurers. So, you know, an insurer might say, I'm up for the first $1 billion of a flood claim, but after that I can go to a reinsurer who backs me for costs over and above that. Those reinsurers, they're thinking twice too. They're like, well, we're not sure how we price the risks in a country like Australia. If you're a Lloyd syndicate in London, we're a long way away. And do you put your capital into backing the Australian insurance market, or maybe back Spain's? It's just over the water. So these are the sorts of things that are going on. What happens is prices go up. Insurance options disappear with some insurers leaving the market. They then exclude certain things they're not that happy about. Or they might have certain excesses where you got to pay the first X amount before the insurer turns up. What's this meaning for small business is pain in terms of the price and availability of the insurances that they need. And in fact, the New South Wales Business Chamber has been very active, pointing out that when asked by them in surveys of their members are saying this is a real pain point that we can't really do a lot about. We're struggling to pass those increased costs on, but man, we hadn't counted on our insurance going up by 4 times where it's been in the past. So that's really what's going on. The real pointy bit of it, though, is what does a business do? We've got, a national tourism strategy called Thrive that says come and experience nature, the outback, our special environment, and do stuff in that context. Okay, if you're in a forested area, fire risk is terrifying insurers, and many are exiting the market. And so that retirement sort of venue or rehabilitation venue where you can have, hydroponic mung beans for breakfast and be very connected spiritually is in a high fire risk area. And I've seen examples even in the Margaret River where people have run a rehabilitation facility or a renewal facility for your personal wellness in a lovely environment where they've gone to 30 different insurers and brokers and only been able to find one that's been remotely interested in providing them insurance, and it doesn't cover the whole of their asset base. So they get worried because their finance from the bank for their business says thou shalt have insurance.
Yes.
Otherwise you risk infringing on your business loan.
Yes.
So they're struggling with that. If you then want to go paddle boarding around a rocky outcrop off the coast, well, that public liability insurance of risk of something happening led my organisation to do some work on how hard it was for agricultural shows, active leisure and recreation facilities, even those birthday centres, family activity centres you see in many suburbs and regional centres where you go for birthdays. They're sort of going, oh, we'll insure the ball pit and you can run around with all those balls and have a great time. That ninja course you've got, no, we're not going to touch that. Too much can go wrong. And heaven forbid, if you had a bouncy pillow like you see at caravan parks, my goodness, they're a threat to global peace. So those sorts of things have been cut out. And people are going, well, what's left for me? How can I insure my business when key parts, key revenue drivers, there's not an appetite there for insurers to actually give me cover?
Forvis Mazars. Same local team, new global reach. A new two-firm network still offering international audit, tax and advisory services, committed to helping our clients confidently build and grow their businesses. Move forward with Forvis Mazars. Visit forvismazars.com/au. That's forvismazars.com/au.
Some listeners may be confused about the nexus between what you've described as insurance increases as a result of climate issues and what happens in the small business land in the high street of the suburbs or the cities. Could you please explain how it is that the small business, in a general sense, is suffering?
A couple of things. Location can be central to it. If you're in an area where there's been an assessed natural disaster risk, you could have a really tough time getting insurance. If you're in the visitor economy and your big selling point is come and enjoy Australia's nature, you may well be in a fire area. If you're an operator of, say, a dive club, sucking air through a pipe diving, or some sort of active leisure or recreation, very hard to get insurance to cover that in the event that something happens.
Is it just those sorts of businesses, or, everybody's experiencing increased insurance?
No, and maybe I didn't explain the hardening of the market well at the beginning, but that hardening is seeing premiums going up regardless. When the insurance market hardens, it costs you more to get the cover you want, likely from fewer options and with more exclusions. Because, these businesses are businesses, they need to pay their way. And when there is an event that causes a major outgoing, they've got to restore their reserves, all the sorts of things why insurance providers take a longer term view. They need to be able to fund the next claim, the next event. It's also getting more expensive to remedy, say, building damage, whether you're a high street premise, a car drives through the front window, all the issues in the building industry then become an issue for your insurance because you've got to get materials, you've got to pay for people to come and do that repair. And there's also been an observation that in some cases people are settling and just taking the money saying, oh, I'll sort it out myself, only to find they can't get the people they need to restore that workplace. And then there's more, vivid examples such as, the equipment hire business in Lismore that knows that they're likely to have flood events way too frequently for their own liking. They have a plan in place to move assets, but if there's an evacuation order too early, they can't put their plan in place, and then all of their hire equipment gets taken out, and that becomes an insurance issue as well. On top of that, there's issues like workers' compensation, the impact of mental health claims and expenses to provide, the appropriate support for the workforce, professional indemnity. If something goes wrong, we have this habit in our country of wanting to blame somebody. So, if I'm a valuer providing valuation advice to a bank on a mortgage, and it turns out the mortgage needs to be called in and the place isn't worth as much as I'd thought it was, the banks will go after me to make up the difference because I provided them bad advice. That triggers a professional indemnity claim. So it's a very litigious moment. It's a very expensive place. The natural disasters have really drained a lot of the reserves that are important to insurance. And that's the hardening market where you're seeing it presenting some real challenges for small and family businesses.
Well, thank you for underlining that for us. But just finally, what can we do about this?
Well, there's three things that I would do. One is I need to be active with my insurance. Insurance in the past, more readily available, less expensive. The market was a bit softer. I maybe didn't have to pay as much attention to it. I'd pay it once. It'd be a set and forget thing. Not now. Not now. I need to be really engaged with my insurance. I need to understand what it covers and what it doesn't cover. And I need to be alert to the fact that there are steps that I can take to maybe improve my risk and therefore the appetite of people to insure me. Second point, be prepared to go to a broker to get some specialist advice. They're most skilled at navigating the alternatives, and there may well be better options available for you. And linked to both of those things is the third point. What can I do around risk management and risk mitigation? What are the steps I can take to reduce the likelihood of an event that will trigger a claim or the cost of such a claim if it occurred? Find out what those risks are. Find out what the insurers look at and see as risky and therefore price that risk in terms of the policy that's made available to you. Get their advice. What steps can I take? How will I be rewarded for that mitigation initiative that I bring forward? And I'd want to see some value for that. So if I'm reducing the risk of a claim or the likely cost of any claim, I want to see that reflected in the premium and the availability of cover. That means I've got to be more involved. That means I've got to understand what's covered and what's not. And that also means I've got to be prepared to spend a bit of time with brokers and others or my industry association to try and find where I can get the best cover for the particular business that I'm in. This is just a broader point too, Jeff. I know some people work from home, and that's another thing to be alert to. Your insurance, your home insurance covers your ordinary peaceful enjoyment of that property as an occupier of a home. Now, if I'm here being interviewed by you, that's not going to infringe on that concept. If I'm a copywriter or I'm providing technical advice, I can probably do that in the study and the spare room, and that won't upset any insurer. If I'm a Harley Davidson mechanic and I've got 3 of other people's Harleys in my garage that I'm repairing and they catch on fire, my insurer is likely to say, hang on, that's not a reasonable use of a residential property. You didn't tell us that you were doing this commercial stuff that's well beyond the pale in terms of the peaceful enjoyment of a residential property. So to your listeners that are using home offices or maybe a home salon in the garage and things like that, really important to inform your insurers about it. They can normally make some accommodation for those things. The worst thing you can do is not tell them and then find that they're not prepared to cover an event that you thought was covered by your insurance because they're saying, hey, that's not a residential thing. You're not just selling half a dozen chicken eggs out the front. You've got a barn down the back and there's 20,000 birds down there. Come on, that's hardly residential. So that's the other thing that I'd just put as a little post note there too, Jeff.
That was Bruce Bilson, Australian Small Business and Family Enterprise Ombudsman. This episode of Business Essentials Daily is produced by the team at SoundCartel. Thanks for listening. I'm Nicole Goodman. We'll bring you more Be Daily tomorrow. Follow @BE Daily Podcast across social media and head to bedaily.com.au for more from the Business Essentials Daily podcast. SoundCartel. This episode was brought to you by Forvis Mazars. To find out more, visit forvismazars.com/au. That's FORVISMAZARS.com/au.